Research suggests that a busy schedule is one of the top reasons why people reach for takeout over home-cooked meals. So what's the answer to fix it? Well, today I'm going to tackle a week's worth of meal prep, which will include shopping, prepping, and even preparing a few of our meals throughout the week. I'm also going to share what worked, what didn't, and my plans moving forward. At some point over every single weekend, I sit down and figure out a menu plan for the week coming forward. I don't always go so far as to prep that meal, which is what we're going to do today. But I take a look at what's in my refrigerator, look for items that I need to use up, and then I check the weather. I feel like this is such an important guideline where I'm at because it can be 75 one day and 40 the next. So checking the weather really lets me get a handle on what type of meals I want to make for my family. After that, I head over to Pinterest and find some new ideas for recipes if I don't have a long list of family favorites that the kids are looking for during that week. With that in mind, I take my grocery list and I head off to the store. Now, if you noticed, I only grabbed a very few items in the grocery store, which were mainly produce, and that's because I keep a very well-stocked pantry. I also ran over to Sam's Club, which is right next door to the grocery store where I really prefer to shop. One of the items I was specifically looking for on my list was green beans. So I ran over there hoping to find some fresh. Of course, they didn't have any, but I was able to grab those frozen, put them in the freezer, and then I'll be able to have them going forward. So that's a nice help. I also grabbed a couple bags of tortilla chips, some bagels. I'll talk a little bit more about that later because I am hoping to get back into making bagels soon. But also some cat food. So my total spent at both grocery stores on human food was $48.90. I did take off the $27 for the cat food because that is not part of my normal grocery budget. Additionally, I will add in that this is about a once a month thing for me to actually come up here and do this because I do get the majority of my produce straight from Azure Standard as well, meaning that for many, many weeks out of every single month, we have bulk produce at home. So this trip is not necessary and I just make a meal plan based off of what we have at home. Now, once I get back to the house, it's go time. So the items that do not need me to handle them are immediately put into the pantries where our dry goods go. The other items, like produce that I'm going to be cleaning, I don't even put in the refrigerator before I move on to the cleaning process. This helps me make sure that, one, my refrigerator is staying more clean than if I were to just shove these bags straight in there from the store. But two, that I'm going to have ready to grab items at all times for my kids in the refrigerator. This has been a game changer for us in making sure that they get more fruits and vegetables than they normally would just by having them available for them to grab anytime that they need a snack. Now, a couple weeks back, I did a full in-depth video on how I clean all of my produce and that process, so I won't go through all of that again, but if you are interested in how to get your produce clean, prepped, and to last a little bit longer than normal, make sure to go back and watch that, and I will link it at the end for your convenience, but it has made a huge difference in just what we can get our kids to eat and how fast we go through really healthy options. My littlest helper is all too ready to get these grapes cleaned up. I did make sure to go ahead and grab 2 bags because I knew without a doubt that if I had a bag of grapes out getting cleaned and drying on my counter, that they would fly off of that towel as they dried. So this is true on the days when I'm cleaning produce. We go through a lot of it. So if you are taking on this method, just know that your kids are going to eat more produce when it's out, and that is okay. We want them to eat healthy, great options instead of relying on pre-processed snacks or picking less healthy alternatives out of the cabinet. Now, I also grabbed a bag of apples here. I buy apples 20 pounds at a time most typically, so this bag that I have is not going to last very long at all, but it was just enough to give them that taste while we wait for our Azure order to come in next week. The next step on my meal prep journey is to go out to the freezer and grab all of the meat that we're going to need for the week. I have truly found that this is the single most important step to get me to follow through on any meal plan. When I grab out something like salmon and a tri-tip and some other really great cuts of meat, I feel guilty setting them to the side and going to grab something quick for my family. So for me, the lock that seals the deal, or the piece of this puzzle that seals the deal and moves me toward action, is knowing that I have a ton of meat thawed out in the refrigerator. So even if you aren't going to go to the extra steps to meal plan out your entire week, if you just grab a few cuts of meat out, I guarantee you it will help lock you into cooking more at home and therefore saving money. Now, back inside, I have found that I am a very visual person, and I am not typically prone to use of a digital planner of any sorts. So I put together a sheet called Meal Prep and More that I'm in the process of fine-tuning to be exactly what I want it to be for a roadmap in my kitchen. So I have a section for what I'm going to chop today, what needed thawed out, and exactly what meals we're going to have on every specific day, plus any ingredients that I might need to add or subtract, and what I need to do to move forward and accomplish my goal. This is really handy for me because I want to be able to look in one spot and say, okay, I need potatoes for 3 different meals. I need these chopped and I want to leave these whole, just so I can make sure I'm accomplishing everything at one time. The whole idea of meal prep is making sure that you're batch preparing items so that you can get things done faster. And this sheet is allowing me to do that. Now, as my produce finishes drying, which is a super important part of the produce process to make sure it's clean and dry before you put it in the fridge, I pulled out a little portable fan that we got for our baseball season, and it's helping to dry my produce. So if you have a fan at home and you want to speed the process along, you can do that. I also heard somebody say that they use a hair dryer on the cool setting. So anything that will help to speed the drying process along when you are completing the washing process is always a great idea. So I wanted to make sure to share that, and also to let you know why I have a fan blowing up on my countertop. With those items completed, it's time to move on to the actual prep. I have a ton of peppers coming in right now, and actually during the week after I filmed this, we got a freeze warning and I had to pull in all of my peppers from the garden. So my counter is currently at this very moment covered in peppers that I'm getting ready to go prep and put away for the season. Now, just as my little one was so excited to see the grapes, my older daughter cannot wait to get her hands on some peppers. So one thing I will say is that anytime I'm cutting up peppers or anything that I know that they really enjoy, I always make sure I start with a bowl for them. This saves me the frustration of feeling like what I'm trying to prep for my meal is going or being stolen off the cutting board and running away. So just starting out with the idea that I'm going to need extra and I need to get some for the kiddos is always my first order of business. And that helps to keep the little fingers away from the cutting board. So just a little tip there if your kiddos are anything like mine and love produce. I also keep a trash bucket, or you can see my black bucket here. This is actually the inside of my composter that I keep on the kitchen countertop. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later, but I love to keep it right by the cutting board. This is a huge win for me because it's taking the extra steps of getting rid of all of my scraps once I'm done and taking that out of the way. Everything goes straight into the compost bucket, and then I can just move it over to the composter when I'm ready to go. Now, while you are looking at my cutting board, make sure to take a good look at those carrots. When I said earlier that I always start by looking in my refrigerator and seeing what's about to go bad, these carrots were at the top of the list. If you can't see that automatically, I'll definitely let you know. Some of them were getting a little bit soft. They've been hanging out and they're crisper for about 3 weeks at this point, so it was definitely time to get them used up. My plan for the carrots was to peel them and chop them into small enough chunks that they would roast easily in the oven when we're having a dish in a couple days with potatoes and Brussels sprouts. I find that roasting carrots is a really great way to use up any that are a little bit past their peak of freshness because your goal is to soften them anyway, so you're not looking for that snap or crunchy texture, and it is just a really good way to use them up because the last thing we want to do is have anything wasted. With that said, once I peeled these up and chopped them, I got them put in the refrigerator, and my kiddos ended up taking them all. By the third day, right before I was getting ready to use them, I realized that they had eaten every single carrot. There was not one left. My takeaway from this is if it's a vital ingredient to a recipe, I need to make sure to label it as such or move it to a different part of the refrigerator where it isn't easily accessible for the kids. So if your kids are going to be in stealing your meal preps, you might want to make sure they know what is or is not available for them to snack on during the week. For me, this worked out just fine. I just took some frozen ones and put them on the sheet pan instead and got to use up my carrots anyway. Next time, I'm going to make sure to grab double the fresh carrots that I need. This will allow the kiddos to snack as freely as they like and also put some in the oven for roasting. The next major item that I needed to prep are potatoes. My kids love potatoes. We have potatoes roasted. We will have baked potatoes. I should put that in air quotes because we actually use our Instapot for our baked potatoes. They turn out really creamy. It's really hands-off and something that I don't have to really monitor, and we can warm up throughout the week when we need an extra side dish. But for this specific week, everything needed chopped. We're going to have a zuppa Toscana soup, which is the kind of the remake of the Olive Garden classic. So that needs chopped potatoes. And also we're going to add some chopped roasted potatoes for our meal that we're going to have with the steak, the carrots, and the Brussels sprouts. Now, my potatoes are homegrown, which means dirty. When you have homegrown potatoes, you do not wash them when you bring them in because it shortens their shelf life that they will last in your cellar or wherever you're storing your potatoes. As a result, this is one of the things in my kitchen that takes the most time when I go to use it, especially when I'm doing a lot of them. Now, because I'm using more than one recipe during this specific week that's going to involve potatoes, this process takes me quite a while, and it is one of my least favorite things to actually accomplish during the week because I feel like I can spend 15 or 20 minutes washing and chopping potatoes alone, and that's about the amount of time I would like to spend on the whole meal if I'm being really honest with myself. It's generally what I have available if I want to get the meal on the table at a decent time of day. Now, traditionally, potatoes aren't something that are commonly meal prepped. And the reason is because when you cut them up, they will turn gray if you leave them out exposed to oxygen. One way to get away from that is to submerge them in cold water and put them in the refrigerator. But what I found is that after a day or two, you're really impacting the texture of the potato. And since I'm not using them for mashed potatoes, which would mean texture wouldn't really be an issue, I wanted to make sure that I kept a lot of the consistency of the potato I was looking for intact and was able to use them later throughout the week instead of having to push those potato meals to the first one or two dishes of the week. Now, before I give you all the details on exactly what I plan to do to keep these potatoes looking their best, I want to take just a second to update you on this kitchen countertop composter that we've been using in the house for a couple months now. If you've been around my channel for a while, you know that Vega sent this to me a few months back after I mentioned on air that I was super interested in trying out something of this sort in our home. You see, I've been interested in composting for a long time, but have not got my brain around the process outside. Now, I know for many of you, a huge compost pile is second nature, but for me, it is currently a hurdle. So having an option to compost right on my countertop by simply throwing my scraps in and a little tablet to help break down the food is amazingly welcome. All you have to do is turn it on, hit the V for the Vago mode, and the machine gets to work. And the best part is, all week long as we have a meal, whether it be breakfast, lunch, or dinner, all I have to do is twist the lid, throw the scraps in, and start it again. It weighs itself automatically and knows exactly how long it needs to process. If you are looking for a better way to handle waste in your kitchen, make sure to check out my link in the description below and use the code THEHometownHomestead 10%, which is all capitals, and you will receive 10% off your order today. And thank you again to the folks at Vigo for sponsoring today's video. Now, jumping back to the potatoes, if you take a look at my tiny helper over there, you will notice she is throwing them into a vacuum seal bag. This is the method that I figured out would be the most effective for me to keep the quality that I was looking for and still give me the option to meal prep them in advance. So once I threw the amount of potatoes needed specifically for roasting into this bag, we sealed it up and did the same thing for the amount of potatoes I was going to need for the soup. And I have to tell you, I am through this week's meals at this point, and these potatoes did not lose their texture whatsoever. They held up really well to the soup making as well as the baking. If anything, I would say they might have baked a tiny bit faster because they might have been slightly softer, but there was no noticeable change in the flavor or texture once they were roasted. It might have just shaved off a couple minutes from the end process, which is the overall goal of meal prep, right? So I'm considering this a huge win and definitely something I'll I'll do again in the future. If you do not currently have a vacuum sealer, you don't need it just for potatoes. Although with that said, I did a little research, and according to various estimates, a vacuum sealer can potentially save you hundreds of dollars a year on food waste. And some people even say they save up to $2,700 annually by extending the shelf life of foods and significantly reducing what they throw away due to spoilage or waste. With our potatoes handled, it's time to turn our attention to what's left in our meal prep. Now, I do have all of the meat that we pulled out earlier and all of the vegetables prepped and ready to go. So the last thing I need to do is just look over my checklist and make sure I'm not forgetting anything, which I commonly do in situations like this. The whole reason I put that list together to begin with. So now with everything complete, it's time to load up the refrigerator. My goal when loading it up is to make sure the items that are just for me or that the kids don't need access to are up at the top, and the things that they can quickly and easily grab or want to snack on are down low for easy access. Now, I have heard that grapes in a big jar like that will last several weeks, but I don't know who's putting that to the test. With a family the size of mine who stays away from the majority of all processed snacks and food items, it doesn't take long for us to go through a bulk of produce. Now, I want to show you one more snack that we really enjoy, and this is our summer sausage that we have made from the deer that the boys harvest every year in the fall. We have 2 rolls left when I'm making this content, and you're seeing one of them get cut up right now. So we are ready for the fall, and we're ready to put some more deer back in the freezer. I actually told my husband this year I would like the majority to be made into summer sausage or breakfast sausage because it makes such a valuable high protein snack that the kids can grab anytime they want. An added bonus if it's already pre-cut, as they don't have to wait for me to finish any project that I'm in the middle of to grab their snack. Now I'm moving on to the actual meals that I made from my meal preps, and I also want to share a few things that I wish I would have went ahead and prepped that day as well, which leads me right into the first meal that I'm going to share with you today. It's zuppa Toscana soup, and if you've ever been to Olive Garden, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This soup is full of sausage, bacon, potatoes, and it's in a very nice heavy cream base. While I did already have the bacon cooked, so that was prepped and ready to go, and the potatoes cut up, I did not go ahead and brown the sausage on Saturday when I was really busy. I could have done that and it would have saved a little bit of time at this point, although I did pull out the meat to thaw. So I was one step ahead of where I could have been if I thought of this during this specific day. But I do think it would be a valuable addition to a meal prep schedule to go ahead and brown all of the meat that you need during the week. I also did not pre-chop my onions. I've heard various things about onions and what kind of bacteria they get into them as soon as they're cut. So I like to leave those together to the last minute, but I could have went ahead and cut them and thrown them in the freezer just to protect them from any sort of spoilage. I also am shredding up some Parmesan cheese to go on top. This was a last minute option, but you can throw Parmesan cheese in a big chunk like that into your food processor and it will grind it up really beautifully for you. You do not want to use the actual shredding blade on the top. You want to throw it in chunks in the bottom and use the chopping blade. I was amazed to find that out. It works really, really well and is a really great hack if you're going to be going through quite a bit of Parmesan at one time. So while I was a few steps ahead due to my meal prep, I definitely could take this a little bit further. And in the future, when I'm setting out to meal prep, I will do just that. I also made 1.5 times this specific recipe, and I should have made 2 times because the guy that you're looking at right there ended up having over 4 bowls that night. And what I planned to have enough leftovers for everyone to eat the next day at lunch, I definitely did not. There were lots of happy kiddos, but there wasn't enough leftover for mama to be happy. Now, the next meal I'm sharing is a beautiful wild-caught salmon. This is quick and easy. If you have a pre-cut, already sectioned off salmon, it makes the meal prep so easy. I put a garlic butter on top and threw it together with some green beans and some rice, and that is all we needed to do. Again, could have made the rice early. The green beans I did plan to meal prep, but I ended up only being able to find them frozen, so that was done for me. The third meal and the final meal that I'm going to show you today is a tri-tip and some roasted potatoes with Brussels sprouts, and was going to include the carrots that we cut up at the beginning. But my kids got to all of those carrots. They plowed through every single one the morning I was getting ready to make this meal. So I went down to the freezer and pulled out some pre-chopped frozen carrots that I already had done. Because the carrots were so small, I didn't put them in at the same time, gave them a little extra time. But this tri-tip and the vegetables turned out to be a huge hit for everyone in the house. So tell me your thoughts. Do you meal prep? What did I miss? And what are your favorite hacks? All in, I'll definitely meal prep again. I'll take a few things a little bit further. But I want to take just a moment to thank the folks at Vago for sponsoring today's content. Again, if you're interested in that composter, make sure to check the link in the description. Thanks for stopping by, friends, and I'll see you back soon.